a silence descends. Not the emptiness of nothingness, but the weight of what we choose not to see. A voice arises neutral, merciless, whose first utterance dissolves the mind's chatter. Suffering is not accidental. The body sags beneath burdens unchosen. Desire flares, only to find itself extinguished by the world's indifference. That is the opening chord. Simple, cold, unavoidable. There is in us a mythical hunger for fairness, that life should answer us, should reward our striving, should hold its end of a bargain unspoken. But the cosmos has no contract. Every illusion of justice infects us with expectation, and expectation breeds suffering. We clutch at narratives. I deserve respect, love, success, but the world offers none but its own indifference. To suffer is not to fail. Suffering is the mirror that reflects the gap between what we imagine and what is. And so, the soul stands naked, quivering in the light of disillusionment. In that quivering, clarity begins. Modernity promises comfort, constant distraction, endless novelty, but these are walls erected to keep us from looking deeper. Each notification, every promise of something new, mutes the ache of being. Yet, the ache is the truth. A sensation of emptiness where meaning was mistakenly expected. To chase illusions of happiness is to court despair. The faster we run, the sharper the shards of dissatisfaction. We are all pilgrims through a desert of longing, and the oasis is a lie sold by our own unwillingness to face the barren ground underfoot. The body aches, the heart breaks. We imagine our pain to be unique, yet all hearts break. A mother mourns a child, a lover mourns a lover, a child mourns a loss of innocence. But these stories are only variations on the same theme. Desire meets its limits. In that meeting, suffering blooms. We learn, slowly, that to expect life to be anything other than unrelenting is to dwell in illusion. Yet, in facing that unrelenting fact, we find not despair, but a kind of quiet understanding, no balm, but a necessary reckoning. Every age sells false hope. We believe in progress, in improvement, in the valor of positivity, but progress only shifts the shapes of suffering. We trade famine for loneliness, war for anxiety, scarcity for overstimulation. Illusion adapts, masks itself in brighter packaging. The true sin is not suffering, but denial of suffering's inevitability. Even the pursuit of meaning becomes meaning's enemy when it seeks to outrun suffering itself. In the depths of our interior, suffering unchosen gathers. Rejection, loss, failure, they carve hollows. We fill them with stories. It is unfair. It should not be this way. Somebody is to blame. These stories prolong the wound, demanding justice that does not exist. To drop them is not to excuse cruelty, but to cease demanding a world that cares. Accepting that the world does not care thins the gap between expectation and reality, and suffering's edge becomes gentler, less torn by angst. Here arrives a release, not in saving ourselves, but in seeing we were never separate from suffering. The body, the mind, the world, they are one flux. The will craves, the world resists, suffering arises. The heart learns to rest in that rhythm, like a wave reading its own rise and fall. Not to celebrate, not to despair, only to observe. When we seize the silent fight against what is, there is a strange peace. The peace of surrender, not to annihilation, but to seeing the futility of resistance. Modern idols, wealth, fame, social approval are all talismans against emptiness. We seek recognition the way a beggar seeks bread. But recognition, once gained, demands ever more. The hunger never ends. The must-have becomes the must-keep. And so the illusion intensifies. You see the trap, you own a thing, and it starts owning you. You win desired favor, and the fear of losing it rises. You climb ever higher, only to see the ground fall away beneath you. Every human relationship becomes an arena. You expect reciprocity, love, validation, loyalty. When those expectations fail, and they always do, the betrayal feels cosmic. Yet the betrayal is only the collapse of illusion that another can be your refuge. Others are as broken, as lost, as desperate to be seen as you are. They cannot soothe the wound you carry. You carry it. You must meet it. To expect others to bear your suffering is to ignore your own sovereignty, delusion disguised as need. In that horror and beauty, the soul sees itself clearly. Stripped of pretense, the one who suffers is the one who clings to fairness, to justice, to validation. The moment of truth is simple. Nothing promised, nothing owed. You exist like a stone in the stream, buffeted by currents. You cannot command their course. Yet, in that buffeting, stones find their shape. The edges worn by resistance become smooth. The rock becomes a vessel for reflection. Release pulses again. The realization that suffering is not punishment, but the matter of existence. To live is to suffer. Illusion yields to fact. Still, in that clarity, something changes not in the world, but in your relation to it. The self withdraws its demand that life serve it. In the emptiness of that withdrawal, there's room to perceive what was always there. The luminous simplicity of being which asks nothing, demands nothing, yet shines without regard for pity or praise. You look around modern edifices, virtual kingdoms, noise crafted to distract, and you hear the silence underneath, the silence of truth. You do not escape the world, you withdraw from its illusions. You see how they shimmer, how they promise deliverance, but deliver only deeper craving. And you stand apart, lucid, unmoved by applause or rejection. You walk the deserted halls of expectation and see them for what they are, paper-thin membranes, torn by the finger of awareness. Your breath is the final teacher. Thought quiets. You feel the body's subtle vibration. The ache remains, but you no longer flinch. The world's indifference touches you, and you touch it back not with hope, but with lucid awareness. There is no transcendence in the promise of arrival, only in embracing the walk through the night without illusions. The candle wanes, and you do not run to relight it. You watch the wick, sending its last glow across the dark, and there in that flicker is the clarity you sought. Life is hard because you expect it to be fair. That expectation is the root of suffering. To release expectation is not to embrace suffering as virtue, but to cease resisting it. There is no cure, but there is seeing, cold, clear, unsentimental. And that seeing is itself the quietest solace, not of the body, but of the will. The flame dies. The monologue ceases. The spectator remains not enlightened, not healed, but looking with unflinching gaze into the abyss. And there, suspended in stillness, truth endures. You stand in the half-light of awareness, neither saved nor condemned, but aware, and in that awareness lies the first true form of freedom. Not freedom from suffering, but from the belief that it must not be so. The will, always reaching, always craving, tightens the noose around the throat of peace. When desire fades, even momentarily, a strange quiet arises, not joy, but the absence of grasping. And in that absence, something unnameable breathes. To suffer is not extraordinary. It is the pulse of existence itself. Even the stars die, their radiant centers collapsing into silence. And we, foolish in our hopes, think that our heartbreaks are exceptions. Yet what is love but a temporary blindness, a trembling attempt to escape isolation by merging with another will, equally hungry, equally broken. The agony that follows is not betrayal, it is revelation. The veil falls, and behind it, the truth has always waited. No other being can complete you. The world is not malicious, it is merely indifferent. And it is this indifference that cuts deepest. Were it cruel, we could curse it. Were it just, we could appeal to it. But it listens to neither plea. It moves according to no moral logic. The flower withers, whether it blossoms in beauty or rots in ugliness. The rain falls on the innocent and guilty alike. The ocean does not care who drowns. And from this we learn, fairness is a fiction maintained by the desperate. We suffer most when we believe our suffering has meaning, as if pain is the price for reward, as if sorrow builds towards something redemptive. But the universe owes no compensation. It offers only moments brief, passing, easily lost. The meaning we crave is our own projection, a mirage formed by the will's refusal to sit quietly in the face of what is. To abandon meaning is not to embrace nihilism, but to finally cease lying to oneself. Every pleasure hides a future wound. Every hope is a contract with disappointment. Even success, when held too tightly, becomes another burden. The summit is always smaller than imagined, and once reached reveals higher peaks or the vast futility of climbing. We look down and see the sacrifices made: sleep, love, peace, all exchanged for a moment of fragile elevation. And once it fades, the climb begins again, not from desire, but from the terror of descent. Detachment is not apathy. It is the soul's final act of honesty. It does not refuse the world. It ceases to expect anything from it. It walks among beauty without clinging, among horror without fleeing. It does not dull the senses, but removes the veil through which suffering multiplies. The detached one still weeps, still aches, but no longer asks why, no longer believes there should be any other way. Even memory becomes suspect. We remember what we need to remember to survive, not what is true. Nostalgia is a lie told by pain to make itself feel noble. Regret is suffering's echo, pretending it could have been avoided. But all that has happened was the only way it could happen. The chain of cause and effect is unbroken, relentless. There is no moment that stands apart from necessity. Even our choices are illusions, shaped by conditions beyond our control. You wake each morning not as a blank slate, but as a vessel already filled with longing, fear, half-forgotten wounds. You rise not to conquer the day, but to bear its repetition. The clock turns not toward something, but in place. And the soul, if it listens, hears the dull rhythm of recurrence. What you feared yesterday returns in new clothes. What you chased yesterday now flees by a different name, and through it all, the will persists, unwilling to let go. But what if letting go is the only act left? Not in defeat, but in clarity. To see that the struggle is itself the prison. That to cease striving is not death, but the first real breath. To sit beside your sorrow without needing it to change. To watch the world pass without needing to be seen. To feel loneliness and not recoil. To let the fire burn down and warm your hands at the ashes. This is not despair, it is the soul's quiet acknowledgement of truth. And in that truth, the world becomes still, not kinder, not softer, but less confusing. You no longer mistake shadows for gods or silence for punishment. You stop looking for signs. You stop asking the sky for answers. You listen instead to the wind through barren trees, to the breath between thoughts, and you understand this is it. This was always it. Not the story, not the climax, not the triumph. Just this, just now, just what is. There is no reward waiting, no final resolution, no secret wisdom that redeems it all. There is only the gradual fading of illusion and the strange relief that follows. The weight of expectation slips off the back. The war ends. Not because it is won, but because you no longer believe in the need to fight. The battlefield lies quiet, the smoke clears, and you remain, not whole, not healed, but no longer deceived. The body continues, though the will has long since grown tired. Muscles move by habit, faces are worn like masks, and speech flows without meaning. One drifts not through days, but through semblances of days, repetitions, strung together by vague duties, vague conversations, vague dreams of some better future that never arrives. This is the theater of the modern soul, illuminated by artificial light, fed by artificial desire, and numbed by 1,000 empty consolations. And yet the inner void persists. It does not ask for attention. It waits. It waits beneath the laughter, beneath the scroll of 1,000 images, beneath the music, the news, the noise. It waits in quiet rooms, in the pause between tasks, in the eyes of a stranger. It does not scream, it whispers. And its whisper is unbearable to those who cannot be still. For to be still is to hear the truth, that what you seek cannot be found where you are looking, that every external pursuit is a detour away from the wound itself. You were taught to strive, to achieve, to matter, but these are just the songs of the will, dressed in noble language. Every success is a chain in gold, every ambition a cloak woven from unrest. Even goodness becomes performance when rooted in desire for recognition. The will contaminates everything it touches, and the more you feed it, the more ravenous it becomes. What once satisfied now barely registers. What once thrilled now barely distracts. And so the will mutates, ever hungry, never full. Relationships, too, fall under its spell. We do not love, we demand. We do not connect, we project. The beloved becomes a screen upon which the will casts its fantasies, and when they fail to reflect what we wish to see, we call it betrayal. But the betrayal is not theirs, it is the failure of illusion. Love becomes suffering the moment it expects to be reciprocated. It becomes tyranny the moment it seeks permanence. And in this, we learn that even tenderness, when ruled by the will, becomes a source of pain. Loneliness, then, is not the absence of others, it is the absence of illusion. It is the state of seeing clearly that no one can complete the self, that no one can fill the chasm within. And this clarity, though brutal, is a gift. For in it we are no longer deceived, we no longer wait for rescue, we no longer sell our peace for the promise of companionship. We walk alone, not because we must, but because only in solitude does the self finally stop running. The world continues to move. Markets rise and fall, leaders speak, crowds gather. But underneath it all, the same truths persist, that suffering is ceaseless, that happiness is fleeting, and that meaning is not given but imposed. The masses chase novelty, hoping newness will disguise the old ache. But the ache is not temporal, it is metaphysical. It is the ache of existence itself. To be is to suffer, not because life is cruel, but because desire cannot coexist with peace. Religion once tried to soothe this truth, wrapping it in parables and promises. But even salvation becomes another bargain with the will. Suffer now, rejoice later. The illusion of reward remains. The ego hides behind sacred words, clinging to the hope that its suffering serves a purpose beyond itself. But the abyss offers no purpose. It simply is. And to stand before it without illusion is the final test, not of faith, but of sobriety. The wise do not escape suffering. They stop fleeing it. They sit in its presence like one sits beside a dying fire, feeling its warmth fade, yet not moving away. They see through the spectacle of society, through the charade of ambition, through the hollow victories of success. They have no need to speak. Their silence is not emptiness, but the fullness of what cannot be spoken. Their gaze is not cold, but calm. They have wept all the tears the world can wring from them. What remains is stillness. And in that stillness, the world becomes simple again. Not easier, never easier, but clearer. A tree is just a tree. A face is just a face. The sky does not carry messages. The wind does not bring omens. All things are what they are, unburdened by the weights of your longing. And this, too, is freedom. Not the freedom to have or to become, but the freedom to no longer need. The will may flare up again, it always does. It whispers of what could be, what should be. It tempts with visions of love, of legacy, of grandeur. But the one who has seen through it smiles faintly, like one who recognizes an old trick. They let the will speak, but do not follow. They let the desire rise, but do not act. And in doing so, they slip beyond its grasp. This is not transcendence, as the mystics preach. There are no wings, no ascension, no merging with light. There is only this, the absence of illusion, the end of striving, the quiet joy not of getting what you want, but of no longer needing it. The pain remains, but it no longer owns you. The sorrow lingers, but it no longer confuses you. You wear your suffering like a garment that no longer fits, but still shields you from the wind. And so you walk not towards something, but with something, with sorrow, with stillness, with truth. Each step is not progress, but presence. Each breath is not strategy, but surrender. The world does not notice you, it does not care. And in that indifference, you are free not to win, not to shine, but simply to be. There is no climax to awakening, no glorious unveiling. It arrives like winter, quiet, indifferent, absolute. You open your eyes, not to radiance, but to grey light. You see the scaffolding of the life you built, each beam a desire, each nail a fear, and realize none of it can hold you. What once seemed a fortress is only scaffolding around a hollow center. The truths you clung to were conveniences. The meanings you forged were anesthetics. The story was never yours. It was survival dressed as purpose. Look back, and the moments you thought mattered, the applause, the embraces, the victories, fade into silhouettes. What remains are the long silences, the sleepless hours, the still mornings when you faced yourself and saw not a hero but a stranger. These are the true milestones, not where you triumphed, but where you finally broke. Not where you were seen, but where you saw. It is not pain that undoes us, it is resistance to pain. The soul grows not through pleasure, but through what it survives without reward. And still, the world parades its illusions. Happiness is sold in images. Success is measured in numbers. Worth is assigned like currency, fluctuating with trends and attention. You are taught to monetize your soul, to package your identity, to curate your existence. And so you become a brand, not a being. But in the quiet hour, the emptiness howls louder than any algorithm. You turn from the screen and face the mirror. There, your eyes betray the truth. You are exhausted from pretending to matter. Suffering deepens when silence is avoided. In noise, pain is delayed, not dissolved. But once the distractions falter, once the lights dim and the crowd recedes, the soul remembers its wound. You feel it in the jaw clenched without knowing, in the breath held too long, in the thoughts that circle like vultures. And finally, there is nothing left to distract. You sit with your suffering, not as enemy, but as the only real companion you have never truly faced. To be disillusioned is not to be lost, it is to finally cease being misled. The fall from grace is not a fall, but a correction. You do not descend into darkness, you rise from delusion. What is exposed is not failure, but the structure of longing. You see how every fear was a child of expectation, how every hope was a veiled refusal to accept the nature of things. And so begins the slow, uncelebrated return to what is to the raw, unbeautiful simplicity of existence. Detachment does not arrive with thunder. It comes slowly, like snow covering ruins. One day, you stop expecting apologies. Another, you stop rehearsing what you should have said. The appetite for being understood fades. You stop explaining yourself, not from pride, but from recognition. No one can understand what you no longer need to defend. What breaks in you is not strength, but permission to no longer carry what was never yours. You walk differently now, not in haste, not toward a goal, but as one who no longer believes the path leads anywhere final. You pause more often. You listen without preparing to speak. You let silence linger like incense in a ruined temple. You do not rush to fill it. You do not flee from what it reveals. For in silence, the lies of identity wither. The roles dissolve. You become less and therefore more real. Even time changes its texture. No longer a race, it becomes space. Hours are no longer measured in productivity, but in presence. You begin to taste the moments again, not as fuel, but as flame. The warmth of tea on a winter morning, the light through a cracked window, the sound of breath beside your own, knowing it too will one day cease. Nothing lasts, and because of this, everything matters, without mattering too much. And in this soft devastation, a paradox unfolds. You grieve the loss of illusions, even as you are grateful to be rid of them. You mourn the years spent chasing shadows, yet know they led you here to this stripped-down clarity. You see that truth does not soothe its ears, but from the burn, something raw and incorruptible remains. Not a better self, but a self no longer trying to be better. A self that simply is, and suffers, and still breathes. You no longer seek salvation in others. Love becomes less of a hunger, more of a presence. You give without needing. You stay without clinging. You let go without rage. What once felt like loss now feels like alignment. You are not less connected, you are less entangled. Relationships are no longer lifeboats. They are moments of shared stillness between two solitary vessels adrift on the same dark sea. The will is not gone, it stirs at times, remembering the chase. But you meet it now with the eyes of someone who has returned from war. You no longer mistake its urgency for necessity. You let it rise. You let it fall. And in between, you rest not in joy, but in freedom from the demand for joy. Not in peace, but in surrender to what peace really means. Not the absence of pain, but the end of protest. The final illusion dies slowly. The illusion that anything must be other than what it is. You stop asking why. You stop seeking signs. You no longer believe that the universe is speaking to you. It is not. It is simply being. And that, at last, is enough. The trees do not comfort. The sky does not answer. But they exist. And in that existence, unbothered by your suffering, there is something holy. You are not healed, you are not whole, but you are no longer deceived, and that is a kind of grace, the kind that does not save, but sees. The light thins, not with violence, not with warning. It recedes like the tide, leaving behind the bones of what once was longed for. You do not chase it. You watch it go, knowing now that chasing is the nature of suffering. What flees was never yours. What remains was never lost. The world does not close, it grows silent. And in that silence, you are no longer the subject, no longer the observer. You are the vanishing point between the two. All striving ends here, not in completion, but in fatigue deeper than flesh, older than thought. The will, once the tyrant of your being, now kneels, not defeated, empty. Its voice, once insistent, now quiet as breath at the threshold. You hear it, faintly, still pleading for a reason, a meaning, a future. But you do not answer, you do not banish it. You let it dissolve like mist in morning air. What was once your master becomes nothing more than weather passing through consciousness. There is no resolution, no circle completes, no arc returns. What unspools is not a story, but a stillness. The self that watched, that spoke, that wanted, dissolves like ink in water. You feel yourself softening, not into joy, but into transparency. You are no longer seeking to exist, you are letting existence happen without interference, without you, without the ceaseless naming, claiming, blaming. There is grief in this, yes, but not the grief of loss. The grief of awakening, that all you once held sacred was scaffolding for your own fear, that all you once believed was merely the echo of desire disguised as truth, that the world you fought to fix was never broken, it was simply never meant to conform to your hunger. That suffering was not an error to be corrected, but the very texture of reality when stripped of delusion. Others still move through the dance. You see them now not with superiority, not with pity, only with recognition. They wear the masks you once wore, they speak the promises you once believed. They reach, they hope, they burn. And you, no longer participant, become witness, not detached, but dissolved. You smile, not out of satisfaction, but from the quiet sorrow of having seen too much. The heart no longer pleads. It beats, not for connection, not for story. It beats like a drum for no ceremony. It simply beats. You sit within it, like one sits beside a fading fire, not needing more warmth, not fearing the cold, just watching, just letting what is be what it is, without resistance, without embellishment. And this, finally, is peace, not the kind that rescues, but the kind that requires nothing. Time slows, not in seconds, but in sensation. The past is no longer a burden, the future no longer a lure. There is only this room, this air, this breath, and in this narrowing you expand. You become less and therefore everything. The one who suffered is gone. The one who sought is gone. What remains is not you, it is the space where you once clung, wide, silent, unclaimed. No one will remember this moment. No one needs to. It does not need to be told. It does not need to be shared. It exists outside the realm of narrative, like a stone lying beneath a frozen river, unmoved, unseen, undisturbed. You are that stone. You are that river. You are that cold. There is no transcendence. There is no light. There is only this final breath of clarity, this last letting go, not of life, but of the illusion that life must fulfill. And when even that releases, when even the echo of the will fades, there is only stillness, not silence, stillness. And in that stillness, not peace, not meaning, only truth. And then, nothing,